Namaste, welcome to Season 3, Episode 17 of TT Talks. My name is Suhaas, and today we have a special guest.
Hi, I'm Romeena Kureishy, and I teach Urdu at University of Chicago. I'm also the Urdu instructional lead at New York University's Hindi Urdu Teacher Training Institute. I've been teaching Urdu in the US for about 15 years now. This is my 15th year, and have learned a lot, made good friends, and enjoyed the experience of being an in the academics in the US.
Gotcha. Perfect. So, Miss Romeena, let's get started with the questions. So, question 1. Can you discuss your experience as a South Asian in academia?
Yes. It's been a very good experience. I'm not as experienced as a lot of the other respected colleagues of mine in academia, but it's been a great journey. The people are all very helpful. It's a very small community of Hindi Urdu instructors, and when you add other regional languages to it, it becomes, it's a larger pool that way, but it's small in numbers if you compare it to the other European languages or other languages as such. So it's been a great experience. I've met wonderful people and learned a lot along the way.
That's perfect. And I think one of our email conversations you were mentioning that you were getting your doctorate, your PhD.
I'm getting my MPhil right now.
Okay, gotcha.
Which is the next step to getting the PhD.
Gotcha.
So yes.
So how does it feel kind of being a student and being going through that entire process of going from one stage to the next? Because I don't really know a lot of individuals who are pursuing a PhD actually.
So it's been a great run. I went back to school after 30 years.
Wow.
So that was a challenge when I got admission in my master's. And I decided to get my master's in Urdu from Pakistan. Because if you want to get a master's or a higher degree, an MPhil or a PhD, I think there's no better place than Pakistan or India.
Really?
For a PhD in Urdu or
yes.
Hindi. So I went back. So the first year was a struggle because I had forgotten how to be a student.
Yes,
and, the retention, it would take time for me to retain things, but then it became easier. And then after I got my master's, COVID hit.
Oh, okay.
It took about a year and a half before I could, pursue the MPhil PhD route. So in Karachi University, where I'm doing my degree, they have broken up the PhD into two parts. So you have to do your MPhil first, and then you do your PhD thesis. So I'm done with the coursework, and I'm working on my thesis right now.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow, that's so exciting. Is there any shocks with the kind of academic content, or are the courses and kind of process just as difficult as you expected it?
They're difficult if you want them to be difficult.
Okay.
So I think for me, what kind of worked for me was I was a student. I went back to school much later in life, and I had life experience. So a lot of the things that I would have had to struggle with 20, 30, 35 years ago seem easier to me.
That's good.
Also because I've been teaching, and I've been in the middle of Urdu.
Yes.
So that helped as well. The coursework, the curriculum was very competitive. I went through the curricula for various universities in India and Pakistan. I was very comfortable and satisfied with the curriculum. The teachers were very good.
Yes.
The system of education, the way of teaching is different.
Yes.
In South Asia, in Pakistan. So that is something I had to sort of, for a lack of a better word, come to terms with. Some things, because since I teach myself, and we follow the 21st century pedagogical practices.
Yes.
And for me, I would always be giving in my 2 cents worth after classes. I was like, how about we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this assignment, or maybe make this assignment like this? And sometimes it was appreciated, and sometimes
it was not appreciated.
But it was a great experience overall.
Wow, that's fantastic. So a question that I had for you is that if you are studied in Pakistan and you did a lot of your starting off work in South Asia, why did you want to come to the United States and teach Urdu?
So I didn't start teaching Urdu until 2008-9. That was the year I started teaching. And by that time, I had already been here for 17 years.
Gotcha.
So I got married, and I had no intentions of teaching Urdu when I first moved to the US. I moved here in February of 1991.
Okay.
And this happened by chance. I had a really good friend who taught at University of Pennsylvania, and she taught Urdu there. And she said that there was this summer program happening. And if I would be interested in teaching Urdu, it's only for 3 weeks. And I said, I've never taught Urdu before.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, we'll train you. And that was the Star Talk program. And I was very lucky to be in the very first Urdu Star Talk program in the US.
Wow.
And it was a great learning experience. And if you don't know much about Star Talk, I want to take a couple of minutes and talk about that. So it was a federal initiative started by President George Bush II, Jr. And the idea behind it was that the critical languages should be the ones that should be taught to, not should be, but we should be teaching critical languages, and there was a list of about 11 languages to students in the US, and not just the heritage students, not of students who came from those backgrounds, but also, non-heritage students. So
of course,
people with more background in those languages. And we got a lot of funding for that, and Urdu and Hindi both were part of the languages on the Star Talk program. And the good thing that happened is because Urdu never got a lot of funding. I mean, it's not a language that gets funded a lot. Not in Pakistan and not in the US.
Really? Okay.
So we got a lot of funding, and the Urdu Hindi programs have sort of run side by side as sister programs in a lot of the universities and schools, which was a great experience. And and that enabled us to not only train teachers, and we got really good professional development consultants. We got the biggest names in the US in pedagogy to come and train us. That also gave us the opportunity to create a lot of materials. So we created a lot of curricula, we created lessons and activities, and just a whole treasure trove of them. So even now, if you go to the New York University Virtual Hindi website, if you just Google NYU Virtual Hindi or Virtual Urdu, you can go there and you can spend hours on that website. Because there's a lot of resources, because it was all done by tax money and it was all open for public. So it's public property and anyone can use it.
Wow, okay. So when you mentioned that Urdu doesn't get a lot of funding, that actually very surprised me, because there's a lot of Urdu speaking individuals, right, in the United States?
Well, they do get funding, as in they have Title VI programs, or they have some other smaller projects that get funded.
Yeah.
But that funding is not, the amount of money they receive is not equivalent to, I guess, the number of speakers.
Oh, it's not. Yes.
This is my opinion. This is not the official opinion. But with Star Talk, I mean, over a course of 14 years, I think we got about $6 to $7 million.
Oh, wow.
And that's a lot of money.
That is a lot.
Yeah, overall. So these were all the Urdu programs running between 2008-9 and 2021. We lost funding, so Hindi Urdu lost the startup funding in 2021. And 2021 was the last year that we had the startup program. And so, yeah, I mean, that kind of funding we never had. And especially, the funding, the universities get funding, and they have programs, they have researchers that get funded. This was money coming to a lot of community-based organizations who are working with schools in their areas. So they never got that kind of funding before.
Really?
And it was all put to very good use, yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's really interesting. Wow, I didn't even realize that there's so much behind the scenes that goes on for these programs.
I mean, it was during those years there was a lot going on.
Yes.
And it actually really helped. It really helped the languages a lot. All the languages that were part of that.
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah. That's fantastic. Wow, okay. So,
and the biggest thing that came out of it for Hindi and Urdu was the NYU Teacher Training
Initiative.
That's what came out of it, because it was initially the Star Talk. It was initially run by the Star Talk funding, but now we are funding it, through the universities, and now it's NYU and UT Austin and Michigan State. So we are all collaborating and running the program, and we provide teacher training to Hindi Urdu teachers, not just in the US, but since for the last 2 years, we opened it up to the teachers of Hindi and Urdu languages in India, in Pakistan, or anywhere in the world. So the last 2 years, we've had teachers who attended from Poland and Fiji, India, Pakistan, Canada, Qatar, and the US.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Wow. That's so interesting to hear about. Wow. Wow.
But I'm back to my passion, teaching now. Well, I love training teachers as well. But teaching is always fun, and University of Chicago is a lot of fun.
Of course. Yes. So perfect transition to our next question. But how have you seen the representation of South Asian culture and perspectives change over time, while you were teaching, while you were interacting with the culture?
So when I started teaching, and I can tell you more from the Urdu perspective. I mean, my friends who taught Hindi or who are teaching Hindi, we all kind of struggled with it. But initially, back in 2008-9, the way I've seen the change is that there wasn't a lot of material available online. So we teach using authentic materials, which means it's any material that's created for the native speaker of our language. So I would, so there was stuff on YouTube, you could find films and you could find some dramas and you can find news casts and things like that.
Yeah.
But over the years, and I think it's because of the social media and the power of internet.
Yes.
That it has just exploded. So the materials that are available now, I mean, even with Rekhta, the materials that are available are mind-boggling. It's amazing. And then using actual books, and I still have them. We use the Realia, we use the real books, and we bring them to class to show to the students. But the books that are available online, the resources available online have just exploded. So you see that it's become very easy to find something about South Asia now. If you Google something and you get 1 million hits, right?
Yes.
More than 1 million hits around that. So that has changed. And then we see representation. Well, I would say mostly in technology, because that's how the world is going. And you see the keyboard fonts. You see languages. You can type now in Hindi and you can type now in Urdu. And it's very easy. It's on your phone, it's on your iPad, it's on your computer. Before we had to download the font. And I still have, a font downloaded in my computer. I don't need it now because everything has the Urdu font now. Yeah. So that is the one thing. And then, translation, you click on a word, it gives you the pronunciation, it gives you the translation. So all these things I see are very representative of South Asia and the need to know, and the need for these things in languages belonging to South Asia. ChatGPT is the new big thing, right?
Yes.
And I was playing around with it. I like technology and I use technology a lot, but I don't survive on technology. So I'm still a little old-fashioned that way. So I still haven't used ChatGPT much, but I've played around with it. It was amazing to see that, it has a lot of material and it'll give you things in Urdu and that was a wow factor for me.
Yeah.
So all of these things, if you look at this, all of these things are showing that there is representation of South Asian languages in the world. There is a need. That is why these things are there and they're being used a lot.
Yes.
So that is one. And then I think you had sent me a question about the ways language technology is changing institutional structures and the system of powers and influence in third world South Asian countries. And I think we can go back to technology. And I've noticed that, earlier in the olden times, well, a couple of generations ago, or even sometimes now, people would go to the one person in the village who could read and write,
yes,
and write letters for them, and that person was of immense importance. maybe they charged money, maybe they didn't, I'm not sure, but we had these things. But with technology, I see people who are not literate, and they have the phones in their hands, and they know how to use WhatsApp, and they use in voice notes for their family or friends. I have friends and people I know in Pakistan who are not literate, but they send me voice notes on WhatsApp. So that's immensely empowering for them. They don't have to rely on others, and that does change the power structure in those countries, in those areas. And then again, the information is not when you're thinking about going to school, studying, the information is not limited to the prescribed books. So you don't, the universities give you a list of books. Yes. Before I would go and buy those 5 books and I would read those and, go to the library, maybe look at those books. In my 20s, I was not as diligent. But now, for my MPhil and for my master's, I had the prescribed books, which I did buy because I wanted those.
Yes.
But then I had access to thousands of books online. So the whole I think the whole printing business has changed a lot.
With of course.
With online books and all, but it has also changed. They don't have that kind of an influence, I guess, anymore. As they did earlier. So things have really changed, and I think they've changed for the better.
I think what you mentioned about the textbooks and everything, that also relates to, other subjects as well. Like I'm in college as well, and I can definitely see a lot of our classrooms kind of switch more into the tech field. Like all our participation is done through tech. All our assignments are done online. All our tests are done online. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because I've talked to individuals, they're like pen and paper guys, like they can't do anything. But I feel like it's much more important to be able to adapt now to the changing world, especially after virtual COVID and like that whole virtual scheme. So I definitely think it's for the better as well.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely.
So following up on your question, so one question I have for you is that since there's so many, textbooks and resources available online for Urdu and resources, how do you motivate people to want to learn that on their own, or how educate themselves? How do you motivate individuals to be able to look into this information themselves during their busy schedule and kind of learn more about Urdu culture?
So it depends on the curriculum you're teaching and what the topic of the curriculum is. The more interesting the topic and the theme of the curriculum, the more interested they are, and the more they're keen to look into it, outside of the classroom requirements. And one of the so when we do teacher training, the ACTFL, it's the American Council for the Teaching of Foreign Languages. It's the organization it's the umbrella organization, and all the language testings and all these things are done under ACTFL. And ACTFL standards, the way you teach a language, you have to incorporate the 5 C's into it. And it's communication, culture, connections, comparison, and community. And there's a way you can actually incorporate all 5 of them, even in a little activity that you do. And one of the things about curriculum is that you want to teach a curriculum that will enable the student to increase their global proficiency, not just the linguistic proficiency. And when you want them to know about things related to the world, you make sure that those topics are so interesting and so relevant to the student, that I have almost always seen at least more than 60% of my class, look into something other than the coursework, other than the book, or other than the article or the link, the video links I have shared with them. And sometimes their task is to bring back some information. In a flipped classroom, they have to bring back the information to the class. So I think it depends on what you're teaching and how you're teaching it, and it can make a world of a difference.
Gotcha. So specifically talking about your teaching, how do you make it engaging for your students?
Well, after a lot of training myself, so there are strategies and there are tasks that you make them do, which are in the 3 modes of communication. As long as the activity is real life and has a purpose, it will be engaging. So if I gave you a worksheet and with 10 sentences and just gave you the drill, the grammar drill, okay, just, change the tense of this. And I do that too, because that is also important. But if that's the only thing we did in class, it would be very boring. It will not be real, because in real life, you don't use language to fill out worksheets. In real life, you use language to communicate. And as long as you make the activities and the tasks in your classroom real life and relevant to the student and within context, the students, the class remains learner-centered. You have to make sure that the class is learner-centered. As long as they're doing all of that, they're engaged. So if you're asking them, okay, we are going to, so there's 4 groups of the students, and we're talking about environmental pollution in the target language, so in Urdu or Hindi. And here are some news clips that you have to see, because you're going to become an expert in this part of this topic. And then once they see it, they get the information down, then you kind of mix the groups together, one from each group, and now they have to tell each other what they learned in the target language, because they have to complete an assignment, which means that they all have to bring in their information that they collected. Now they are hearing the language, right? They're watching something which is also bringing in culture for them. They are then taking that information and they have to relate correctly, so the pronunciation and the tense and everything. So there's all that language learning taking place, and then they have to talk to each other and tell them what they saw. And that's the interpersonal part of it. They're using language for a real life purpose. It's not a made-up purpose. So, and in the end, then they create the assignment, whatever it is. When all of this is happening, none of the student is quiet in the classroom. They are not quietly completing a word. The only time they're quiet is when they're watching the video or they're reading the text that they have to, right? So I always say that in the language classroom, and I learned it from my teacher, in the language classroom, you should always hear students talking, but they should be saying what you want them to say. And that's the whole essence. And it's, I guess, I didn't make this up. I learned it from all the trainings, from my teachers. But that is how you keep the student engaged. And they're very engaged.
That's okay. Wow. So, for example, like let's imagine that I am an instructor that you are teaching. So if I have questions like, how do I make my students more engaged with my subject? How do I make what we're learning about more interesting to them? How would you kind of approach me and like discuss these things with me?
So are you talking about the language, like a Hindi teacher or a Tamil Telugu teacher or
Hindi teacher,
or any subject?
We could do any subject actually.
I don't feel I can talk about every subject. Think there's spillover, of course.
Yes.
There's spillover. I mean, you could do this with a science or a history project or something like that. And this is where connections come in, where when you're teaching a language, when you talk about other subjects, when you're talking not just about the language, but things that are happening, in, say, for example, history or architecture or science or whatever. So whenever you bring in other subjects into your language class and you talk about those subjects in Urdu or in Hindi or in Tamil or Telugu or whatever language that you're learning, that is the sea of connections. And it all kind of gels together. So what I would tell you is the same thing. When I would train you, I would tell you, okay, you need to have a curriculum that is age appropriate, that, you need to have a topic and lessons and information that's relevant and that is, and you need to make tasks that are real life. There should be a reason why they're speaking that language. So the student, if you want to teach them, if you want to teach them postpositions.
Yes.
May, say, par, ke liye, because we were just doing this in class a few weeks ago. You're not going to give them a list of the words and what they mean and then leave it there and have them fill in the blanks. That's one way of doing it. That's how we did it in school, right? Growing up. But now there's a whole, when you make it relevant to them, when it becomes real life, then it becomes like, okay, what does your room look like? Here's a picture of a room. tell me what you see, describe this image. And when they see two pillows on the bed, they will have to say, bistar par do takiye hain. They use the par. Or if they see, two chairs in the room, they will have to say kamre mein do kursiyan hain. So now you've given them the vocab. They know what it is, but there's a reason for them to use it. Now when they describe their own bedrooms, they have to use postpositions, they have to use the vocabulary, and they have to use colors and numbers and things like that. So now things are in context. You're using the language for a real life person.
Yes.
Would you describe your room to somebody? Yeah, sure. Yeah. You would, right? Would you go and fill out postpositions in a fill in the blank somewhere in real life? No.
I had flashbacks to like being like in a classroom and everything. That was fantastic. Wow.
It is fantastic. I think the 21st century pedagogy is fascinating.
That is. So along those lines, what steps do you think or recommend should be taken to ensure future generations of South Asian individuals are able to keep in touch with their culture and traditions? Because as more and more, South Asian descent individuals are born in the United States, they're more distant from their heritage and their familial culture. So how do you recommend people stay in touch with that?
So I think for the kids growing up in the US, and especially if they're second generation or third generation now, my daughter is still in touch with the culture because of me and my husband. So, she goes back to Pakistan with us, and she has family, and she talks to them in Urdu, and, she's still kind of, she's around the culture. But once she has kids or they have kids, and I see, we now see third generation immigrants and fourth generation, and I wouldn't even call them immigrants, like third and fourth generation South Asian or Hindi Urdu speakers. And I think one of the things, and I've seen a lot of this happening, well, not a lot, but I have seen examples of it, where the parents from my generation, they spoke to the kids in English because they were like, oh, they need to know how to speak English. If we spoke to them in our own language, then they won't know the language, the English language, and that's a big no-no as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
Just speak to them your own language. If you speak 3 languages at home, speak to them in those 3 languages, because that's such an asset, and it's such a great gift you can give to them. Everyone will learn English eventually. English is the lingua franca.
Yes.
It's the language of the world. No matter where you are, everybody will at some point learn to communicate in some form of English, right? Because that's needed. If they have to, because that's needed. But I think staying connected, I really can't say what's going to happen 2 generations from now. It's sad because it does happen, it will happen. But what I see happening is now in the US at least, you have this whole influence of Bollywood.
Yes,
so there's films playing in the theater, and with the I think it was Anarkali, the theater, the theatrical production.
I believe so. Yes.
Yes. So all these things are happening, and they are great because even the people who are not from that culture, from our culture, or people who are not of of that language background, they can still see and watch the film, enjoy it, and so that's one way. And then you see, and these are things that are already in place. So those things are happening. And then you see all the restaurants. So you go to the bigger cities, even smaller cities have desi restaurants, right? They have Indian, Pakistani restaurants. And people kind of know chicken tikka here. People know naan, and people know dal chawal.
Yes.
They know this stuff. They know what else? They know lassi, they know chai, right? So things are in place which will help the future generations stay in touch with their culture, even if they don't go back to India or Pakistan. Can a lot more be done? Yes. Who's going to do it? I don't know. People like you, Suhas. I think it's like you. You guys are doing a great job. So
Thank you.
Someone who was born and raised here and realizes that we need to stay in touch with the culture. And there's one thing I always tell teachers, and when I'm training them, and I think it's so true. Cultures are so different even in one own's household. So if you're a family of 3 or 4 siblings, the way you were all raised together in one household, but the way you run your own house is different. So every house has its own culture, right, of doing things. And diversity in culture is so beautiful. And it is such a magnificent thing. And I always tell my teachers, I said, in India, Pakistan, people not normally, but when I was younger, and even now you hear sometimes they say, you tell them, oh, I do this for, say, for example, for Eid, or I do this for the wedding, we do this rasam, or we do this, and they'll go like, oh, हमारे यहाँ तो ऐसा नहीं होता. Oh, we don't do this. It doesn't happen it doesn't happen in our household, yes, or where I'm from. Mm-hmm. And now, having lived here for such a long time, I feel that it should be replaced by, oh, how beautiful, oh, how wonderful, we just learned a new thing.
Yeah.
So, different is only different. It's not bad.
Yes.
It's not that yours is better and mine is not as good, or mine is better and yours. It's not that.
Yes.
If you do things a certain way and I do things a certain way in the same thing, oh, that's fabulous, because you have these people celebrating one thing in so many different ways.
Exactly.
And I think diversity is beautiful. And coming back to your question, I think things are in place.
Yes.
That will help the younger generation, the next generations, stay in touch with the tradition and with the culture, and we can do more by informing each other. So, like, for example, this podcast. I know that you guys have a Tamil and Telugu tutor club, but I think this is wonderful because we get to exchange ideas, and I get to know you guys and about the work that you're doing, and I think it's just fabulous.
That's fantastic. Yeah, our main purpose of what we want to talk about is kind of how people express being South Asian and their culture differently, right? So we interviewed a lot of professors, we interviewed a lot of community leaders, we interviewed our friends, and all of them, they all under that same umbrella, but they all do it different ways, which is what we want to highlight, and that there's no one template method of people expressing who they are, because that's exactly who someone is, the way they express themselves. And so you never want to hinder someone's expression in any way.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely, I agree, and that's a great thing that you guys are doing.
Perfect. So as we kind of start to wrap up this podcast, what are some things that you have goals for yourself, or things you'd like to accomplish, once you progress further into your career?
Okay, so I hope to complete my PhD, hopefully. It's still about 4 years away, but hopefully I will finish that. And in the meantime, so I just started teaching at University of Chicago from this quarter, and it's been a great experience. And I have a lot of students. I have like 13 or 14 students. That's quite a big number, so which is good. I think what I would like to do is, apart from teaching the language courses. Yes. I would love to teach some content courses, which are not generally taught in the US, which have to do more with Urdu language. So maybe, because a lot of the courses I took during my master's and my MPhil, of that, there is no course, at least that I know of, in the universities I am associated with or have been associated with. But something, focusing on something like, and I enjoy it a lot, it's called Tarikh Koi.
Okay.
And so it's something that people did, poets did, and writers, mostly poets did, and I didn't even know about it till I studied it for my course. And then when I studied it and I met somebody who does Tarikh Koi, and it was just fun. It's like saying a couplet, and if you add the numbers, the value of those letters, the answer is the year that thing took place.
Really?
So it's quite fascinating. Okay. Yes, it's quite fascinating. So for example, there's this one couplet, share that somebody said, and the last line was, I think it was, Lata Mangeshkar Khamosh Ho Gayi. I might be a little off on some of the words, but it said Lata Mangeshkar Khamosh Ho Gayi, and if you add all the letters, and letters that's a whole different thing, but letters have values, and if you added all the letters, the number is 2022, and that's the year she passed away.
Oh wow! Okay,
So stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, and I've given a few talks on this, and it's been very well received. And I feel that if there was a course,
Yes.
all the small things like tarikh koi, and like how to read a manuscript. What are the things you do but just focusing on the language.
Yes.
I'm sure people do it for other. I'm sure. I mean, for graduate students, they do it already.
Yes.
But on a more lower level, maybe for undergraduates who are just being introduced, to this, that would be fun. So, and then courses on Pakistani film, courses on Pakistani drama, because that's a big thing. That would be fun. And yes, I'm hoping to do all of that. I don't know. We'll see how.
That's so interesting. Those are things that I've never picked up on that, which is crazy. Wow.
Well, it's a thing I learned myself. So there's a lot of things I learned, and this was the one thing that really fascinated me, and it still fascinates me. And people find years of death and years when something happened, years of birth, in people's work that have already passed away. So like Allama Iqbal, the poet, somebody found his year of death from one of his couplets, and it's a coincidence, of course. But he needs to be really into this and take out the value of all the letters. It's very time consuming, but it's still fascinating.
That's so cool.
At least to me.
That's one more.
So so that's what I want to do, and
perfect.
And I have a lot of help along the way. I have I have a great family, I have a great support system, I have great teachers, I have great colleagues, and one of the things I do want to mention is that we are living in a very turbulent world right now, and India and Pakistan have had a turbulent history, but this is one way we all come together. This is one way we celebrate our common heritage, the common. I mean, I even call it a common language because Urdu and Hindi are so. I mean, they came out of one language. So, so the common bonds, and I think it's so much more important to focus on the commonalities and on the good than anything else.
Exactly, perfect. So, as we kind of wrap up this podcast, what is one thing you'd like to leave the audience knowing, or kind of one moral or lesson?
About what?
Just about your experience. Like someone listening to this podcast, what is one thing they should leave with understanding?
I think in my case, the one thing I realize, and that people also have made me realize, but I also realize now, is that there's no age for anything. I was married, I had a child, I was living my immigrant life in the US, and I was going to coffee mornings and all this stuff, and then suddenly I started teaching, and I was a good student in school and college. I didn't pursue further studies, and now I'm thinking, why didn't I do that earlier? But that's a different topic. But I think there's no age. There's no age to find your passion, and a lot of the times, South Asian women, we are raised to care for our families. We are raised to not think about ourselves, not put ourselves first, but put our families first. So before we are married, we put our parents first, our family first. And then once we get married, our husband first. Once we have kids, our kids first. So, our house first. Everything else is first. But we are not taught to put ourselves first. It's very good to self-sacrifice for things, because those are also very important. But it's also very important to realize, once you talk to women from South Asian background, most of them don't know what they like. What they like, apart from shopping or eating out or traveling or music and watching films and drama, and this is not what you want to do in life. So a lot of the women I see that or that I've talked to, I was like, okay, what is your passion? What do you like to do? Take out all of this other stuff, and there's usually no answer. So I found my calling later, so-called, in life, right? I was in my mid-30s. I was 40 when I started teaching. So that was the 40th year. I was 40 when I started teaching. So, and then I went back to school and did all of this, and hopefully if I do get my PhD, inshallah. So, that will be a great accomplishment for me on a personal level. But I think the one thing I would want the people to consider is that there is no age for anything. And sometimes you fall onto things by chance.
Yes.
Like for me, Urdu was completely by chance, but I enjoyed it so much that it really is like a passion for me. I never knew this, because it gave me an identity outside of somebody's daughter, somebody's wife, somebody's mother, somebody's whatever.
Yes.
So it gave me my own identity, which I think women of South Asia, no matter what background they come from, but if somebody's from my generation, if you're a doctor or you have if you have a like professional degree, that's different, and then you have fabulous, people, women who are doing fabulous things in their careers. But the women who are not doing anything else, you ask them and they don't have an answer for that. So it's for those women who think that the kids are grown up. I don't have time now to do anything. You have time. You still have time, and you can still pursue something that is completely your passion, your thing, and not putting anyone else before you. So
that was awesome.
Thanks. I enjoyed.
Perfect. Yes, I think that's a very important thing. First of all, age shouldn't matter, because people life is different for everyone, right? Everyone's passage life is different. Everyone has certain things going on at different points in their life. So if now, once you figure out like kind of your basic, once you're into your older years, at your 40s, maybe that could be like a time where you start pursuing things for yourself, and that should never be hindered at all. I perfectly agree with that.
And I want to give this disclaimer that life is different for everyone.
Yes.
So life, what my life is or was, is not the same. There are commitments people have that will prevent them from doing things.
Exactly.
But all things being equal,
yes.
if there is a chance, go for it.
Go for it. That should definitely be the motto. Go for it. Perfect. So, Miss Romeena, thank you so much for taking up the time to do this podcast. I'm sure our guests learned a lot from you today. And yeah, I really hope you were able to enjoy this. I know we always ask for you guys to kind of be as formal as you can with the audience, but we also hope that you enjoyed talking about your kind of experiences as well.
No, I totally enjoyed it. It was fun, and I don't get to talk about this a lot, so it's nice. And I think if even if like 3 people find it that maybe we should look into that teacher training that NYU offers, and it's free, by the way. That would be cool.
That would be cool. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.